Hello, everyone. Welcome to this room, and welcome to everyone who's joining us live on Zoom or on Facebook. This is our second Islam and Liberty Network conference entitled Bringing Citizens Back to Power in Tunisia. This is our second conference, and the first conference was just 1 year ago, and it was really very different as far as the topic is concerned. We had the luxury to talk about many topics, like, for example, street vendors in Tunisia, and we went back to the early stages of the Tunisian revolution back in 2011, when Mohamed Bouazizi set himself on fire, and we talked about so many things. But after what happened after the presidential decrees of the 25th of July 2021, which many deemed as a presidential coup, here we are, obliged to talk about something completely different, which is the power of citizens in Tunisia and the crisis that is taking place right now, whether it is social or economic or political. I'm very happy to welcome all our speakers and everyone else who has joined us. And we're happy to start without further ado to welcome our speakers. But before that, I would like to welcome Mr. Ali Salman, who is the CEO of the Islam and Liberty Network, who joined us all the way from Pakistan, and he's going to be, giving the concluding remarks later on. As mentioned in the agenda, we will have 2 sessions. In each session, 2 sessions separated by 15-minute break, and our viewers online can take some time off as well. And then each speaker will have 10-minute presentation, and we will also have some discussion, and we're looking forward to all of your questions. Without further ado, we would like to welcome our first speaker. She's joining us live from the city of Tatawin in southern Tunisia. Her name is Mrs. Jawhara Aziz. She's a political activist, and she's a university professor, and she used to be part of a Nahda party. Mrs. Jawhara, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. Thank you so much for the Islam and Liberty Network for this invitation. Good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Are you receiving me loud and clear? Yeah. Hi. Okay. So
yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Then thank you so much for this invitation. My presentation is entitled "The Failure of the Tunisian Political Elite to Bring Tunisians or to Bring People to Power Since the Revolution," and I'll be speaking about the causes and the repercussions. So the causes of this failure of the let me say that the aspect of this failure is this: what happened in 25th of July, or on 25th of July 2021, and this presidential coup that concluded 10 years of or a 10-year period of political conflicts without any or much ado about nothing, Shakespeare would say. So much political conflicts without any economic and any social change in Tunisia. So the causes of this failure, I think, is the political class absorption in the ideological conflicts rather than having conflicts about social and economic programs. And this ideological rifts or this ideological differences could be understood at the very beginning of this, at the very beginning of this period or of this transition. I mean, 2011, 2014, because it was a period of drafting a new constitution, so a new social contract that in which we cannot ignore any ideological conversations or ideological discussions, but that cannot be understood at all after drafting this constitution with that level of consensus between the different political actors in Tunisia. Unfortunately for the Tunisians, the same level or the same type of conflicts, which is the ideological conflicts and the what I would say or what I would label as the identity politics, resurfaced all the discussions and all the dialogues in Tunisia, leaving no room and no space for genuine dialogue about social and economic policies, which exacerbated the economic and social crisis that had been the main cause behind the revolution of 2011. So besides that, or in addition to this, let's say, failure to reach a real consensus regarding the the vision on the ideology or the mainstream ideology of the new Tunisia, then in addition to this failure, it was added another failure, which is the failure to keep the failure of the Tunisian actors, of the Tunisian political actors, to keep their promises, the electoral promises to the people. I mean, in each elections, there were big promises of changing the socio-economic situation of the Tunisians, of fighting corruption. But what happened, okay, after any elections and during the term between every two elections, is that it's the same conflicts and the same let's say the same tension between the political actors would resurface, and there is no achievement of any electoral promise that shattered any hope among or within the people in the traditional political operation. I mean, by the traditional political operation, this alternation to power and the electoral operation. So people, or the Tunisian people, were disappointed, or were getting more and more disappointed by not only the ruling party, I mean Nahda or Nida Tunis, but by all the political class, because all of them convinced the Tunisian people that they do not have any genuine program, any genuine social and economic program for Tunisia. Furthermore, there was another cause of this deception or of this failure, which is then it's the failure of the political actors to maintain their unity and to their unity as political parties, because the Tunisian political landscape was very or witnessed, especially after 2019, a disintegration within the political parties themselves, and even the most, let's say, the most robust political party that everybody thought that it was immune from this disintegration, which is Nahda, witnessed the same fate or the same destiny, and there were this failure of the leaders of Nahda to abide by the bylaw of the party and to respect internal democracy. And here Nahda is as an example, and it's an example that can symbolize all the political actors in Tunisia. So this failure to respect the bylaw and to respect the internal democracy led eventually to the disintegration of these political parties. So the political landscape of Tunisia is a kind of a wasteland, if we can let's say borrow this image from T.S. Eliot. So it's a wasteland because it's a disintegrated unity. There is no unity in it, and there are many conflicts between the different ideological affiliations and within each political party. All these failures, so the failure to go out of the ideological conflict, the failure to meet the political and the economic and the social expectations of the people, and the failure to maintain their own unities as political actors. All of this helped or intertwined to pave the way for the regression, which is embodied in the presidential coup of the 25th of July. So the first repercussion for all of this is that there is a kind of the transition or the democratic transition in Tunisia maintained its fragility. We thought that this fragility would last only at the beginning of the period, but it was kept all over these 10 years, in spite of this alternation to power, in spite of this apparently successful 5 or 4 or 5 elections in Tunisia. But in fact, there was a kind of, it was a formal alternation to power without any change, without anything that would make people trust or maintain their trust in this political class. So this is the fragility, or exacerbating the fragility of the democratic transition. And the second repercussion, which is what we are living under today, is this coup, which is deconstructing all the achievements. I mean, even the political achievements that we were proud of. I mean, the constitution, the institutions or the democratic institutions that were shaped in the light of this institution were all deconstructed and by this president that we have. And there is a kind of a populist turn in Tunisia that nobody can anticipate and expect where it is heading and where it is leading the country to. So this is, in a very brief way and a short way, the sad story of Tunisia after the revolution. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that I didn't exceed my time.
Thank you very much, Jawhara. That was really insightful, and we will have a discussion later. And if anyone has a question for Jawhara, we'll just wait for the first section to finish, because each presentation in the first section is connected to the other in some way. So thank you very much. And now we move to our second speaker. Her name is Mrs. Amal Azzouz, and she used to be Secretary of State in charge of international cooperation, and she was also part of a leader in the Nahda party. And now she's an independent politician. So the floor is yours, Ms. Amal.
Thank you very much, Tasneem. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Thank you, Ali Salman. Thank you, ILN, for having me again. And I just to add one if you want, characteristic. I used to be a deputy in the National Constituent Assembly, which I consider to be very important, Tasneem, okay, because this is in relation to the content of my presentation today. So I do apologize. I have to apologize, first of all, for not adhering very much to the title I have proposed to you at the beginning, which is Prospects for bringing Tunisians or citizens back to power after July 25th. I'm so sorry, because of restrictions of time, I'm obliged to focus only on just one angle, one aspect or one implication, the implication of what has so far been called the online public consultation, what I personally would call Mr. Qais Said's online public consultation. And I would see to what extent this consultation is really bringing citizens back to power. But in order to answer this question, I have chosen to compare this process, which is supposed to empower citizens. I'd like to compare it to another process which I myself took part in it. I consider myself to be one of those founding mothers of the Tunisian new constitution, 2014 constitution. And I'd like to show you the difference in both processes so that you see which in these processes is really bringing citizens back to power. So the 2014 constitution building process, I said it's thinking and working with citizens, It was the assembly we worked within was a very widely representative assembly, and that was thanks to the electoral law we chose to have a sort of mosaic composition in the assembly, so that every single political and social part would be represented in the assembly. So it was a very wide spectrum in the assembly. The second point is that we chose to start from a zero document or a document zero. Why that? So that no part or no party within the assembly would impose their position or their vision on the others, whatever was their size within the assembly. Another important characteristic or trait or feature of this process, of this inclusive process, is that it was a very transparent process. The constitutional commissions or committees, in addition to the plenary session itself, are all the time open to the public, open to civil society organizations, open to the media, all of the media, 24 hours, on 24 hours they were open, so total transparency. Another characteristic was the inclusiveness. That's very important. It was an inclusive participative approach. More than 350 CSOs, civil society organizations, were involved and were listened to within the assembly. Intensive, we opted for an intensive dialogue, national dialogue. We called it the national dialogue around or on the constitution, and we held more than, let's say, 26 meetings in Tunisia and 18 meetings outside Tunisia. I mean, for the diaspora in Tunisian diaspora abroad. In addition, of course, in addition to that, we established an online platform of debate around the questions of all national concern. When I say inclusiveness also, I would say listening to all experts in all the areas: philosophy, sociology, law, constitutional law, administration, including Mr. Said himself. Mr. Qais Said himself was one of those we listened to in those hearings, in those constitutional committees. And also the NCA consulted. It was open not only to the inside, but also to the outside. We consulted acclaimed commissions such as the Venice Commission for Democracy Through Law. So as you can see very, very quickly, the aim was the construction of a national consensus, and we had a national consensus because we needed consensus around our the citizens' political and social contract, which is this is the most important contract. So we need to have consensus around it, and this is how we succeeded to have this consensus. And you all know, you may all know, as a result, the constitution was passed with by 200 votes out of 217. This is to show you to what extent, I mean, the process was inclusive, transparent, and participatory or participative. However, and the second, if I move to the second now process, the national, what is called the online consultation, public consultation process, I put as a title, using citizens, not working with citizens, not collaborating with citizens, not hearing citizens, but using them and manipulating them with just a stroke of a pen. Mr. Sayed suspended this constitution. This 2014 constitution gave himself the right and the power to rule by decree and to redraft, unfortunately, to redraft this constitution through an online public consultation, or what he insists to call a electronic referendum. This is, as you know, dear gentlemen and ladies, this is the first step in his roadmap. The roadmap he announced it last December, and it's the only unique gesture through which he involved. He's supposed to involving other actors apart from him in the process. People in this consultation are supposed to give their opinion around 5 topics or 5 questions. The first one is education, including education, culture, economy, and elections. However, and in contrast to the process I've been discussing a few minutes later, this process is lacking vision. There is no vision, absence of any vision, absence of any systematic study. And the first point here, I can mention, for example, the absence of a legal framework. There is no legal framework whatsoever determining the rules of the game in advance. You know that whatever, if you want to have something, you need to prepare its rules, the rules of the game. Here, nothing is clear. We just have something in a very unilateral way. The second thing is that this consultation is not based on priority questions discussed in advance by people. The people who are concerned, citizens who are concerned, are supposed to speak and to give their opinion about the future of their country and their own future. They were not consulted in advance about the priorities. They just have these questions in front of them, questions with very difficult words sometimes. So concepts included in these questions are not clear. How can a 60-year-old guy or lady or a young man or an old man understand the difference between a parliamentary system and a hybrid system, for example? This is so no explanations of the concepts very ambiguous and very vague for them. So this is what I meant by the absence of vision, the absence of any systematic study. The second characteristic is it is an exclusive process. In contrast to what I've been telling you at the beginning concerning the constitution of the revolution, and I have the pride to be one of those who drafted the revolution constitution. In contrast to that, there is no inclusiveness at all. It is a very exclusive process. No formal involvement of any political group or of any civil society organizations or of the authority. It is totally excluded. The high independent authority for elections is totally excluded. So this is why I'm telling you this is a very exclusive process. In addition to exclusiveness, I'm sorry, there is total opacity, lack of transparency, lack of transparency on the website itself, the website upon which people will give their opinion. Nobody knew or nobody knows who made this website, who made it, on which criteria, who came up with the questions on this consultation. Nobody knows as well how safe the personal data are. How safe? Nobody knows as well. Nobody knows who the members of the committee Mr. Qais Said will appoint will be. Okay, who will be to draw the suggested amendments? Nobody knows. We don't know if it is an amendment or a redrafting, Mr. Ali. We don't know if it is really a sheer amendment or a redrafting of a new constitution. So when this will be ready, when will it be ready? When? Normally in our constitution, any document, any official document which will be submitted to a referendum should be published in the official journal. Here, in this case, we don't know when, although the 25th of July 2022 will be the day of a referendum, but up to now, we don't know when this document will be ready and will be published in the journal. Who will be in charge of organizing the referendum? Does anybody know that? Nobody knows that. Nobody knows who will be in charge of organizing this referendum. Citizens, to be frank, I finish with this. Citizens don't want this consultation. Citizens, there is a meager participation because this is not a priority. Despite the huge efforts, there are huge efforts made in order to encourage people, including organizing campaigns in neighborhoods, the use of the administration cards, local authorities compelling people, using public and private media. Only 3%, only 419,000 citizens have participated up to now, which is a very, very meager number. There is reluctance, there is indifference. People don't care anymore. People have other priorities. People want food on the table. And this is their first. And to finish here, the president is consulting himself. He is not bringing citizens back to power. This process is not bringing citizens back to power. Mr. Said is just consulting himself. This consultation is his, the committee is his, the new constitution is his, but Tunisia is not his. Tunisia is for all the citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mrs. Amal. We can see that you're very excited about this, given your history in the political life in Tunisia, and you're right about that. So before giving the floor to our third speaker in our first session, I would like to thank everyone who joined us online and in this room. And I want to give special thanks to Mr. Radwan Masmoudi, who has written a lot of comments. We're going to get to them later, and he's joining us from Washington, D.C. So without further ado, we would welcome Mr. Muaz Dhahri, who is a specialist in international relations, and he is also a teacher. And he's going to give us a very interesting approach to this topic, bringing citizens back together. So we cannot wait to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Tasneem. Thank you, Mr. Salman, for being here. Everyone, from the speakers and the audience members. Hello, everyone. The subject I'll be talking about today is do citizens really deserve power? Just a disclaimer, this will not be a critique of democracy. Just to be clear from the beginning. In 2011, the revolution came as a shock to most Tunisians. And probably the most important thing that we achieved was freedom of expression. It was a right that we were deprived of for decades. And there was a lot of passion at the beginning. Everyone that was repressed wanted to express their views. And it resulted in some interesting things, funny things, and a lot of chaos as well. And that is when I got in 2012 into what we can call a little bit the debating community in Tunisia. I was involved in a lot of programs, projects about debate, communication, speaking, etc. And I thought it was important for me to see the second aspect of freedom of expression, not only as a right, but also as a responsibility. So we have the right to express ourselves, but at the same time, we are responsible to research what we express ourselves about. We need to have the knowledge, and also we need to know how to express ourselves. We need to be respectful, and so on. And that question of the second aspect of freedom of expression, the responsibility part, not only of expressing ourselves, but also of being held accountable for the consequences of that freedom of expression, can be generalized to the question of power. I'll just be simple about power is the ability to influence others. So I will be talking here about citizens' power, with the meaning their part in influencing aspects of the governance of the state in any aspect of their lives. So freedom of expression is one of the tools of that power. And I'm talking about citizens in general, whether it is from the political elites, political parties, civil society, of course, and even citizens in general as voters, as people that express themselves, that influence each other, etc. And when I say deserve something, I mean the two meanings of deserve, because we can say someone deserves credit for something, so that's the positive way to see it. And also we can say someone deserves the blame for something. That's the negative way to see it. And I'll try to explain if we do actually deserve power on that sense. I will try to develop this idea, and in the second part, I'll try to explain a little bit how it applies to Tunisia in particular. So first, let's see power from two angles. The first one is quite simple. We see power as a right, and it's quite trivial. It's simple to see from democratic point of view, even from a religious point of view, if you think about Islam, that any person should have the right to have a say in how he is governed and how his life is organized, or how things about his lives are regulated, for example. So it's an inalienable right, which is about self-determination. And I don't think there's much debate about the basics of it. The second part is, do we actually prepare for power so that we assume the consequences of it? I'll repeat that one more time. Do we actually prepare for power so that we assure that we are responsible for the consequences? And I think that aspect is widely undermined in general, and in Tunisia in particular, and I'll get to that. There are different considerations for power. I'll just list three. The first one is about matter, about content. What do we need to influence? What aspects each citizen should think about? What can I do? And that's the constructive part of it. The second one is how, the tools, the culture itself, of how to exercise power, how to implement things, how to interact with others in the spheres that we can, that relate to that power, to influencing things and how they go. And the third one, and I'll say strategy. And I'll bring three things about strategy. The first one is, how do we prioritize things? We want to influence things, but we have 5 things on the agenda. Which one goes first? Which one goes second? And I think that is something that we do not discuss enough, and we don't think about in terms of power. And this is something to be seen and understood about strategy. The second strategic aspect is efficiency. In general, economic experts always talk about scarcity, and I think in most of the world, especially here in Tunisia, we have a scarcity of resources, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's people, whether it's knowledge sometimes. So we need to allocate our resources very wisely so that we can get the results that we want. And the last one, I'll just, because I have a recent interest in management, I'll say that we need to understand strategy also from a creative and revolutionary, let's say, point of view of we need to have results as soon as possible. We cannot just rely on having all these plans of 20 years, 30 years plans, and then just one release at the end. We need something more, as they say in management, agile, something that with quick releases, something that gives us business values. If you want, at some point we need to plan that so that we can have something we can build upon. And I think that is something that is pushed in general. We push things, and that is very problematic from a strategic point of view. If we go to the case of Tunisia, so we hear a lot the idea of we deserve better. So you will hear politicians, especially a few months from the elections, always say, we deserve better, you deserve better, we deserve better as citizens, etc. And I think that's part of the pandering to voters, which is understood, populism sometimes. And I think that's a very problematic statement that makes citizens as if they were children with no responsibility at all. And they are just there so that we can have these super people that will come and gives us what we deserve. And I think that's a very wrong approach in doing politics. And I think in Tunisia, that was the way almost for all parties involved in the politics of the parties we have. And perhaps we need probably more to think about how we can address people so that we can put them in front of their responsibility. You have the power, but you need to be responsible for it. So if you give that discourse of you deserve better to someone who, for example, they are thinking about leaving the country, they are not interested in the public sphere, in the public policies, etc. That is not probably the best message so that you can trigger that responsibility in them. And that means that we need, so that we can have this sense of power as a responsibility, some kind of preparation. And I'll give two examples. One of them is in the past, and I don't think that we get the lesson now. So the problem with 2011 is that we were shocked. As I said in the beginning, everyone was shocked. And the problem with being shocked is that no one had a plan. Sorry. So no one had a plan. And the problem is that everyone went scrambling, and the constitution that needed to be made in 1 year was made in 3 years. And there's a lot of probably incoherence in it. It's like a jigsaw. And that is why probably people, even if as my friend Mrs. Azouz is very enthusiastic about it, but I don't think that people in general in Tunisia now are really going to the streets to defend this constitution. There was a lot of probably inconsistencies in it, but that's to be discussed. And the problem is that we didn't have some proposition of something really strong so that we can have some ideas about how to deal with things economically, how to deal with social issues, identity issues, how to get around that, etc. And that is a problem. So just to conclude at the end, as citizens, we want to be heard, to influence things, to be represented, and that's the part of power we really like. But at the same time, we need to be engaged in a constructive mindset and to be responsible when dealing with the consequences. And perhaps to deserve better, we need to be better. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moaz, for this very unique, for these unique thoughts. So as we've all heard these three presentations, Jawhara was talking about the failure of the Tunisian political class to bring citizens back to power in Tunisia. Mrs. Amel was talking about the prospects for bringing citizens back to power, and Mr. Moaz challenged all that and asked the question, do citizens really deserve power? So now we welcome your questions. You're welcome to raise your hands if you want to speak, or you can just drop a question in the chat box. Yes, just a second, because we have Dr. Radwan who dropped in some comments earlier, and I'm gonna read them out and ask any speaker or any attendee if they want to comment on that. So Mr. Radwan said, he has 4 very important facts, according to him. The first being the Tunisian people elected the Nida Tunis, which is a party, in 2014 and gave them the 3 presidencies. And this party included many corrupt people and remnants from the old regime. Second point, the devastating effects and impact of COVID-19 in the past 2 years, minus 9% growth each year. The third point, 10 years is too short to implement real democracy, let alone to implement real economic growth, which we did not even have time to discuss or agree upon. The fourth one is the electoral law created a very divided and weak parliament / political system, mosaic of small political parties with over 70, that is 1/3 independent MPs. Many of them have corrupt or shady backgrounds. And the fifth and final point is the president, Qais Said, was elected in 2019 and did his utmost to block any governmental or parliamentary decisions, laws, initiatives, and he wanted to create the crisis in order to justify his coup against the constitution and the parliament. So these were Dr. Adam Masmoudi's reasons maybe of why we resulted in this situation. Anyone who wants to comment about this?
Probably just a thought. The fact of 2014 with Nida Tunis, which is corrupt and took the presidency, that's also part of who got in bed with them, and that's probably something to think about, and that's a fact as well.
Okay. You were saying something? No? All right, so go ahead, question.
Tasneem, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
I've read the comments of Mr. Masmoudi, and these are the details that I didn't have time to dwell on. But at the same time, all these cannot, let's say, cannot make us.
We're not really.
Yeah. Yes, Tasneem. All this cannot make
There's
us
some technical
forget.
issues. Yes, we can hear you now. Can you repeat,
Yes.
please?
As I said, I've read the comments of
Jawhara?
yes, I hear you well, Tasneem. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. I said that I've read the comments of Mr. Radwan Masmoudi, and I do agree. I do agree that they are, let's say, responsible, or these are the circumstances in which Tunisia was proceeding in its democratic transition. But that does not mean that we have to forget or we have to ignore the responsibility of the political elite of the political class, because I mean, the corruption of Nida Tunis, or it's not. We cannot say that only Nida Tunis is corrupt. There are many other. I mean, each political party was, or no political party in Tunisia is immune from corruption, and this is the sad fact, or the sad truth of the Tunisian story. Also, if we don't have enough courage, or if we don't summon all our courage in this catastrophic moment that our country is undergoing, and we keep just turning a deaf ear and a blind eye to our responsibilities as political actors in this situation, then I think we did not learn anything from this lesson of this presidential coup. I mean, it's high time that we stood and we revised our strategies, our ways of doing things in Tunisia, in order to reform what can be reformed, and in order to save what can be saved of this beautiful dream for the Tunisians. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jawhara. So we have Mr. Saleh. He's going to have a question, and then we have someone all the way from Malaysia who dropped in a question, and then there's also Mr. Hamda who wants to speak. We start with you, Mr. Saleh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so one comment and one question. First, Moz said this proposition of something very strong related to a constitution building process, and this made me think that I'm originally from Turkey. In both Turkey and Tunisia, I think there's a lot of expectations from legal documents, right? A constitution will come and solve all our problems. So there's this legalistic thinking, which I find it interesting that we observe it in both Turkey and Tunisia. It makes me think about the historical roots of this dynamic. But my question is, why are parties weak in Tunisia? You know, one explanation is the electoral rule, right? But there are other countries with similar electoral systems where parties manage to stay their power, you know. And in Tunisia, you had parties with ideologies, right? And Nahda, Nida, Tunis, these parties had ideologies rooted in history. But why is it that parties are not surviving? You know, they seem to be losing their steam, not only at the mass level, but also fractioning within so much. So this is one question that I've been thinking myself. I would love to have the opinions of others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saleh. Anyone from the specialized politicians who want to answer this question, maybe, before we go to the other attendees?
Could you just paraphrase it again, please? Sorry, I was focusing on my words. I was jotting something. Would like rephrase it.
So why are parties weak in Tunisia? Why parties are not able to maintain their base, their membership? When get elected to the parliament, why do they lose so much MPs? From election to election, you know, almost none of the parties that were, all of the parties that were present in 2011, a few survived until now. Just in 10 years, I mean, I don't know whether there's another country in the world. Why is that? Is my question.
That's a very good question indeed. That's a very good question, Mr. Salah. First of all, there are two principal reasons, as far as I can see in my own experience, which I guess it's a long experience, just before 2011 and after 2011. First of all, parties in Tunisia are weak. This is a legacy of a dictatorship. For a long time, dictatorship wouldn't allow parties to be present. We had what you call just a sort of fake opposition, just few parties to oppose the unique governing and ruling party. We didn't have really a real political life. So we didn't have pluralism the way we see it, Mr. Salah. We didn't have real parties. So this tradition of party life or partisan life doesn't exist in it. It has started to exist after the revolution. And after the revolution, there was other problems, which this time are internal problems within the parties themselves. So, for example, the question of democracy, I've been talking with Ali Salman few hours earlier about the crisis and the problem of parties in Tunisia. What we need is strong parties, but strong parties cannot be strong unless there is democracy within them, unless they have rules to follow. So here we have leadership. What we have is a leaders and few followers, which are ready to be sold and bought from time to time. Okay, which follow their interests from time to time. We don't have really structured parties with structures, with laws, with principles, etc. And I guess this is very normal. We have just come back. We have just come to democracy. We have just got rid of dictatorship. So what are 10 years in the life of people, in the life of humankind, in the life of civilization? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for answering the question. Even though I personally think that, of course, 10 years are not a lot, but we could have done way better. Yes. We don't have to repeat, because here in Tunisia, we always say that, oh, the French Revolution took 100 years for France to stabilize itself and stuff. We don't have to repeat the history, you know, we can learn from history. So we could have done way better in these 10 years. Anyway, I said someone from Malaysia has joined us. Thank you very much, Mr. Sadiq Azani. And his question is, hi, I'm from Malaysia. May I know why did the presidential coup, why did the president coup his own government? That's a very interesting question. And what is he trying to do? We're all asking about this, same here. And how will this benefit him? So can anyone handle this?
I think this is the biggest problem in Tunisia.
Zawhara, yes, go ahead. Can you?
Yes.
Can you repeat?
I would say that it is an impossible mission to figure out what our president wants to do, because nobody knows what he wants to do. Okay, and I'm not sure whether he really knows what he wants to do or not. Okay, but so why did the president coup his own government? So just to make things a little bit clearer, the government was not the president's government, even though the prime minister was chosen by the ex-prime minister. I mean, Hisham Mishishi was chosen by Mr. Said, but though after this primary choice, there was in order for Mishishi to have or for his government to be how to say, to be voted in the parliament, he had to deal with the parliament or the parliamentarian groups, and so for the president in the here I will be speaking in the name of the president. The president thought that Mishishi how to say stabbed his back by having a deal with Ghannouchi, with the president of the parliament or the deputy speaker, and so once this deal was let's say was done between these two presidents, I mean the prime minister and the deputy speaker, so the president considered himself as in opposition to this government. So I'm so here I feel a little bit even ashamed to explain Tunisian politics to our brothers and sisters in different countries, because it is sometimes there is no logic at all. Okay, sometimes this is then you cannot have a kind of logic in order to understand what is going on or what was going on in Tunisia before the 25th of July, let alone after the 25th of July. So then it was not the president's government per se, it was the prime minister was chosen by the president, but after that, afterwards, things changed on their relationship with the between the government and the president deteriorated, and there were many conflicts between them. So Said seized the opportunity of the COVID-19, and here I would agree with Mr. Radwan Masmoudis, who outlined this importance of the COVID-19. So he sees this opportunity and this, let's say, popular anger at how the government dealt with this crisis. So and made his coup. So how will this benefit him? What? Well, how to answer such a question, because what we are seeing now is that Said is the supreme power in Tunisia. There is no Said is the legislator, Said is the executive, and he is the judge also. So he's monopolizing all the powers. So in terms of, if we are going to things in terms of power, Said is the most powerful man in Tunisia right now. But at the same time, nothing is nothing is working in Tunisia. Everything is collapsing. Just a few hours earlier, the Tunisia was downgraded by one of the rating agencies, and the financial crisis is exacerbated. So nobody can figure out how this can where we are heading, as I said.
Thank you, Jawhara. Just to give you like the roadmap from now. So Mrs. Amal is going to add an answer to this very question by our friend from Malaysia, and then we'll give the floor to Mr. Hamda, who has been raising his hands for a question, and there Dr. Radwan Masmoudi also wants to ask a question. Yes, go ahead, Mr.
In one sentence, very, very briefly, to the dear guest from Malaysia, I would say it was not a coup against the government alone. No, it was a coup against a whole system. It was a coup against what came after 2011, all that was born after, including the constitution, the parliament, the high authority, judiciary authority, and now he's preparing also to attack other instances and authorities. So just to clarify things for you, Mr. Sadiq from Malaysia, is that Mr. Said has gone against a whole system that the revolution and democracy brought, because he has another vision for political life and for democracy. He thinks this is wrong. People are not well represented, so he's preparing for his own political alternative, simply, and long before 25th of July, long before.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have some other questions by Mr. Tom, who has always been following the Islam and Liberty Network. Thank you so much for that. And then we also have a question from someone asking who's watching on Facebook Live. Now I give the floor to Mr. Hamda.
Thank you very much. And actually, I have. Can you hear me first of all?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
So thank you. So thank you very much for this very interesting conference, especially in this period, in this very hard period in Tunisia. I would like just to have a question. I have this question, and I would like to get an answer from you. And it's about, right now we are talking about bringing citizens back to power. And maybe my question, because I'm wondering if we really had power during the last 11 years. So the Tunisian, the simple Tunisian guy that we would like to ask him this question: you had really the power before, and probably the power for him it will be summarized in the election day. In this election day, we have a kind of big party in the whole country. So we could say that really we have the power to choose a party or someone to be elected from me. But after that, this simple Tunisian, he would say that this power that I had before had also some bad effect, and citizen to power. How could we convince this guy that this power, it's not also bringing back to political conflict, bringing back to economic crisis, and bringing back to all those problems during the last 11 years. So somehow we had this democracy, this very beautiful democracy that we were dreaming, but it was, let me say, a disabled democracy. It was not able to construct Tunisia, to construct a powerful country. So how we can convince people that this power is very good for them, and this power is in their advantage, and this you can then convince him to fight to get this power back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamda. Mrs. Amel is going to answer you.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Mr. Sharif. I'd like to tell you that you are absolutely right on that point. The revolution empowered citizens politically, yes, through elections, through the right to vote, to choose their representatives, either in the parliament or locally, but also empower them by protecting their freedoms and liberty. And this is the greatest acquisition. However, it failed to some extent, because if we have enough time, I would tell you that it is not, as many people would like to say, a total failure. No, it failed to address their social and economic life and to provide food on the table. I totally agree with you. However, after July the 25th, citizens, and this is what I said in my presentation, are neither empowered. They are empowered neither politically nor economically, and they would never be, according to what we have seen. We've been here with Mr. Saeed in his coup for seven months now, and there are no hints at all that something will happen at the level of economy. The same thing is being perpetuated, the same mistakes, okay? But at least before the 25th, nobody can ignore that there were a certain empowerment, political empowerment at the level of freedoms, political freedoms, personal freedoms, individual freedoms, civil society formation, manifestation, etc., demonstrations. Nobody can ignore that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Amal. So before giving the floor to Dr. Radwan, I wanted to read the question of Mr. Tom Dybel. Maybe you can have a say about that. He asks, what role does money play in sustaining political parties in Tunisia? I think that's very relevant to what we're talking about. Yes, Dr. Radwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tasneem. First of all, I wanted to welcome my dear friend Ali to Tunisia. I wish I was there to welcome him personally, but I am out of the country for the time being. But it's great to see you again in Tunis, and thank you very much for organizing these wonderful conferences. I have 2 points really I wanted to make, and I will try to make them very quickly because I'm not sure I will be able to attend the next panel, but I think they're very important. The first point I wanted to make is that I think we are being too tough on ourselves, as if we were expected to finish everything in 10 years. Both the democratic process, build a real democracy, and then the economic growth, build a real economy. I think that's not realistic. I think that the experience of other countries shows that it takes at least 20 years, if you're lucky, and probably 30 years to build a real democracy and then to build a real economy. These things take time. They are not, it's not one button that you push and all of a sudden you fight corruption. Corruption is, as I think somebody said earlier, that it's everywhere, not only in political parties, it's everywhere, even among the society. The same Tunisians who are demonstrating against corruption are participating in corruption on a daily basis. They give bribes on a daily basis. They participate in corruption every day, and yet they go out and they say, oh, corruption is really bad. It's a culture that has to change. It's a mentality that has to change, and it takes time. It's not really anybody's fault. It's just that these things take time. We had dictatorship for 60 years. Dictatorship strengthens the idea of corruption. Why? Because you don't care about the law, you don't care about other people, you only care about yourself and survival. That's what corruption creates. And so this mentality of corruption, basically forget about the law, I do whatever is in my benefit, and whatever it takes to survive and to become rich, it doesn't matter how. This is a mentality. It doesn't change all of a sudden because we have a constitution or we made some laws or we have democracy, quote unquote, that all of a sudden corruption is going to disappear. So I think we have to be a little bit lenient with ourselves and realistic, more importantly, realistic, that we are only in the first half of the game. It's a long game. It will take 20 or 30 years. I think we are in the mi-temps, halftime right now. We're taking a break from democracy for 15 minutes to try dictatorship again and to see how bad dictatorship can be. And I think now the Tunisian people in general are starting to see very quickly how bad dictatorship can be. And I think this is good. I think this is good in that it will show the Tunisian people that, yes, democracy was not perfect, but democracy is still a million times better than dictatorship. We are now we're living in a dictatorship where Qais Said can do whatever he wants and decide whatever he wants. But I think this is good for democracy in the long run, because the Tunisian people are going to remember, especially young people, by the way, who did not really live through the dictatorship of Ben Ali. They did not experience it. They did not really see how bad it was, especially in the 90s when Ben Ali destroyed everybody and killed everybody and arrested everybody. So I think we have to prepare for the next half. The next half, this halftime of dictatorship, I predict is going to end very quickly. The economy is crumbling. There is no way this government can survive. There is no way Qais Said can survive more than another 3 months or 4 months, because simply it's not possible. People are going hungry already. People don't have food to eat. So we have to prepare for the next 10 years. How? Yes, we have to learn lessons from the previous 10 years. What mistakes did we make? Of course, we made a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of mistakes made. How can we learn from those mistakes so that in the next 10 years, we go to the second phase of democracy consolidation and economic growth? And again, we have to be patient. It will take 10 years, if not longer, to consolidate real democracy and then to achieve real economic prosperity and growth. Again, that, in my opinion, these things take time. So this is really an important point that I wanted to say. The second very important point that nobody mentioned is the impact of foreign interference, foreign powers. This coup has been planned. I guarantee you that this will be revealed very soon in books, not just articles, but books that will show that this coup has been planned and had been planned for at least 7 years, not 1 and not 2 and not 3. For 7 years, this coup has been planned by the Egyptian military intelligence, by the Saudi military intelligence, by the Emirati military intelligence, and by the Israeli military intelligence. They have been planning this coup for a long time. Why? Because they don't want to see democracy succeed in the Arab world. They think that if democracy succeeds in Tunisia, it will be a threat to their own regimes and to their own stability. And so, of course, they're going to do everything they can to destabilize this nascent democracy. And then we all don't know, nobody knows how Qais Said became president. I think it will be revealed soon that Qais Said became president because he had major support, both on Facebook and Twitter, but also financial support. But, you know, with 600,000 fake accounts on Facebook. This will be revealed very soon in books, not just articles, in books, by the Egyptian military intelligence, by the Saudi military intelligence, and Emirati military intelligence. They made him president in 2019 while we were asleep, while we were thinking about, okay, what are we going to do with democracy? And they picked him for this day because they knew that he wanted to destroy democracy. He said in his articles, he said in his publications that this democracy that we built, which is called representative democracy, is fake. He doesn't believe in it. He wants direct democracy, which has never been tried, has never worked except in Libya's Gaddafi. And we know how that turned out. It turned out to be a disaster in Libya. And that's basically what Qais Said wants to recreate, something similar to Al-Jamahiriya Al-Arabiya Al-Uzma in Libya. So I predict that the foreign interference by these very powerful forces, we should not underestimate them, who were able to make strong links with the Tunisian military. Unfortunately, the Tunisian military in the past had been neutral from politics, always refused to get involved in politics. But in the last 6 or 7 years, they built strong connections with the Egyptian military, Emirati military, Saudi military. And so you have a new crop, not majority, but few generals who are willing to make these adventures and get involved in politics and don't like democracy, and they can be bribed, you know, they can be bought, they can be threatened. Anyway, so my point is we should not be naive in thinking that Tunisia is an island where it's only what the Tunisian people decide that happens. It's not the case. Nobody consulted the Tunisian people about this coup. Nobody asked the Tunisian people whether you want to continue with democracy or give Qais Said all these powers. In fact, he's trying to consult with them right now, and only 3 or 4% of the Tunisian people have responded to this so-called consultation because they know it is fake and it is a joke. So we have to believe in ourselves. I think the Tunisian people are very disappointed in what happened in the last 10 years, but that's normal. But I think they're still very much attached to democracy. And I think they will continue to fight for democracy. And I think this coup will be defeated very soon in the next few months. And then we will have another chance to continue building democracy and build economic prosperity over the next 10 years, or maybe even longer, maybe even 15 years. But by the way, 10 years and 15 years is nothing in the life of a nation or in the life of a whole country. That's what it takes to build real democracy and to build real economic growth. That's my opinion. Thank you all very much for this wonderful discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Radwan. So we'll have some few words from Mr. Ali, and then we'll break for the coffee break, and then we will come back in 10 minutes and have the other questions and give the floor to our panelists.
Oh, thank you so much, Tasneem. Well, I just wanted to reciprocate, Brother Radwan, your comments. I'm missing to see you in person here in Tunis. but good to see you at least virtually. And I want to say that, back in 2019, when you hosted me and our workshop here, you left me in very safe hands and made great connections, which you see still today surviving and thriving, actually. So thank you so much for making these, connections and making it all possible. And as you can see, we continue to support the ideas of liberty in Tunisia and other countries. Good to see you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Ali. So thank you so much for joining our first session. We'll go for a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and answer the remainder of the questions and also give the floor to our other panelists. Thank you very much. See you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone, to our second session. I hope you enjoyed that first session. So I would like to start with the question that someone from Facebook Live, she was joining from Facebook. She asked a question. Her name is Hajar Yusuf. She said, there were many international training offered to the political elite from the European Union and the USA. Did they help in reinforcing democratization and political parties? And she gave the example of trainings offered by German foundations in Tunis, and we know that there are many other similar organizations who offer trainings for the youth. And also another question that is related to this, and it is from a friend of mine. Say hi to him. He's from Lebanon, Mohammed Aziman. He said, how to empower the youth with everything that is going on in Tunisia, especially with the major roles that the Tunisian youth have played in the early stages of the revolution. Anyone from the speakers or anyone else from who are joining us online who would like to comment or answer these two questions?
Maybe
Yeah.
I can try. I think it's very likely that the international organizations training had positive role in terms of building some capacity, but the intervention of Qais Said is like an outside factor. Regardless of how much you can better yourself in terms of working across cultures, working across people from different ideologies. Okay. His intervention, I think in this case, came as like an external shock in a sense, but perhaps, before than that, there were also some fights within the parliament as well. So maybe someone more knowledgeable than me can answer that part.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Saleh Yassoun, and we're actually going to give you the floor right now for your own presentation. But before that, let me introduce you. So Mr. Saleh Yassoun is from Turkey, and he is a PhD candidate at the Department of Political Science of Indiana University. His dissertation focuses on analyzing the local governance institutions in post-revolutionary Tunisia. And his presentation is going to be centered about co-partisanship with mayors, institutional performance, and citizen trust in local governance institutions in Tunisia. And, these kind of topics we had the luxury to comment on before, but maybe now all the focus is on the coup. So we'll see with you and you'll get us through that. The floor is yours.
Okay.
You have a presentation, so we're sharing that.
Yes. I'm waiting for. Okay. Can you make it the? Can you make it the? No.
So, Mr. Saleh, before you start, I would just like to welcome ILN Council member Mrs. Özlem, who just joined us from Turkey. Hello. There you go. The floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking my friends Abdelaziz and Tasnim for inviting me, and for Islam and Liberty Network organizing this event. Also, بعد يومين يوم خاص للتوانسة، يوم عيد الاستقلال التونسيون. It's
in 2 days.
Bada Yumin. So after 2 days, it's the Independence Day of Tunisia. So I want to congratulate my dear Tunisian friends.
Thank you.
It's an honor and privilege to do research in this beautiful country with beautiful people. So my outline, I first introduce my research question and then my case study Tunisia, focusing on my analytical framework, giving a taste of my analysis and providing a conclusion within 10 minutes. So let's go. We can move to the next slide. So in Tunisia, how does co-partisanship with mayors influence the citizen trust in local governance institutions is my question. So by co-partisanship, what I mean citizen having the same political party with their mayor. So both citizen and mayor supporting a Nida Tunis or Ennahda or other parties. Yes, we can go. So you can go, yeah. I do interviews and some surveillances, you can go. So this is the framework that I employ to analyze local governance dynamics in Tunisia. You see ideological connections. These connections operate whether through Ennahda's party networks or party networks of Nida Tunis, the other major party at that time. These ideologies passed or a Bourguibist framework at the local level determine the interactions between party organization, appointments to bureaucracy, particularly the office of governorate, and targeted benefits. So who gets what at the local level? So issues related to permits, for instance, who receives building permits, who receives where a certain road is going to build, or even employment opportunities. So this framework, I employ this framework to explain the local governance structure in Tunisia. We can go to the next slide. So this figure 2 shows the seat distribution in Tunisia. The largest two parties are Ennahda and Nida Tunis. As you can see here, Nida earned 76 mayoral seats and Ennahda 131 mayoral seats. But I need to move. So the biggest two parties are Ennahda and Nida Tunis, independence coming second. So I will provide a very brief introduction on those parties. Nida is a party that we classify as an authoritarian successor party. But what we mean by that term is it's a party that inherited the legacy, the ideology of the single party of the First Republic, with what we call Bourguibist ideology, with tenets such as independence, advancing women's rights, anti-colonialism, and Ennahda is a conservative party with Islamist roots that operated under the prior regime through some network organizations. So when the revolution happened, it could benefit from those organizations as well. So the period between 2016 and 2019, so coalition between these two actors, where they kind of shared among each other the bureaucratic appointments, which into 2018 ended up in a conflict, the end of the coalition government, when this study was conducted. So we can go to the next slide. When I compared their 2014 electoral programs, I think this also relates to a discussion early on about whether there were any differences in those parties. What did they offer to citizens? So what I saw is that there are few things different between the programs of these two parties, right? As you see in the table, they basically say the same things. They have industrial policy supporting industrial development, fiscal balance, agricultural production. They even list the same regions as the regions to focus on. as the disadvantaged regions. So the difference between these two parties in electoral competition does not root from different socioeconomic policies that they take, I argue. It rather stems from in-group versus out-group dynamics and cultural cleavages that also orient how these parties interact with the local governance dynamics. We can go to the next slide. So this figure based on the 2018 the Code of Local Collectives, as you can see here, the currently the Ministry of Interior, previously the Ministry of Local Affairs and Environment, appoint the Secretary General who oversees administrative subunits. Mayor chairs both the administrative and the political unit of a local council, and citizens can attend the local council sessions or specific commissions. So what's the purpose of this figure? The purpose of this figure is to show that the mayor is the supreme, the supreme leader at the local level, chairing both administrative and political units. So we can you look at me? Sorry, can you look at me? I will do my finger like that next time. So the formal powers of mayors include supervising the budget, coordinating with central authorities, engaging in hiring decisions, managing municipal property, real estate use, roads, permits, public contracts, overseeing environmental police violation reports. So what these what these formal powers allocated to mayors imply is that they have extensive authority regarding both managing local affairs and deciding how resources are allocated to citizens or locations within municipalities. Furthermore, in addition to that, many council members lack training, formal training. Now, at the time, especially in 2020, they did not have training in the Code of Local Collectives, which provided an opportunity for mayors to expand the scope of their influence within municipalities. So can you move to the next slide, please? So I did 64 interviews across 6 governorates, Kef, Sfax, Gabes, Tunis, Kariwan, Ariana, and I did a survey analysis on Arab Barometer, trust in local government. So we can go to the next slide. So first I will explain my survey results to you. So I'm trying to explain the level of trust that Tunisians have in local governance, right? And this is measured through the question, please tell me how much trust you have in local governance, with 1 standing for not at all and 4 standing for great deal. So 38% of Tunisians did not have any trust at all in local governance, and about 7% had a great deal of trust. And actually this is a lot better figure than the trust in national parliament. Same company asked the trust in national parliament, about 80% of Tunisians did not have trust in it. So I'm going to explain this figure. Okay, I'm very sorry, you cannot see this image very well, but so what I did was I matched the party of respondents with the party of mayor, okay? In figure 6, which hopefully you can see better in your computers, those who are joining over Zoom. What I'm seeing is that Tunisians co-partisan with their mayors are a lot more trusting in local governance than Tunisians who are not co-partisan with their mayors. So just I will give you one summary. About 30% of Tunisians who are co-partisan with their mayors don't have any trust at all in local governance. But this figure rises to about 45% for Tunisians who are not co-partisan with their mayors. So basically, focus on this, what it says party match here. What party match there in this marginal effects figure suggests is that, okay, co-partisanship increases the likelihood of having a higher level of trust by about 30%. So if you're co-partisan with mayor, you are 1 step closer to be trusting to the mayor by 30%. So can you move? And I'll skip that one. It's a bit too complicated. So I will focus on interview evidence. Okay, so why is this happening? Okay, conflicts occur in councils, in local councils. And this conflict dynamics can derive from ideological differences, Nahdawi, Nidawi, or leftist parliamentary, leftist council members and Nahda. And politics at the national level can influence local dynamics, what's also referred as the mentality of selfishness. Furthermore, party ties can be linked to tribal relations as well. So which dynamics can these lead to? Okay, opinions may not be followed through sessions. An opinion raised in Jalsa Tamhidiyya may not be followed in Jalsa Adiyya. Sessions may be more frequently held in closed format, oriented towards co-partisans of the mayor's party. Mayors could force yes or no vote on projects early on, and they may extend their formal powers and extend reward for specific council members, and even distribute certain commission seats among co-partisans. And this expands to construction permits, public space allocation, expediting permits, building authorizations, providing agricultural equipment, supporting certain civil society groups, and finding jobs. So to conclude, okay, in new democracies, parties and ideological connections matter, and co-partisanship with mayors can influence citizen trust in local governance. And so I will start with policy recommendations, since we have a policy-oriented room here. So what can be done is strengthening civil society organizations and independent organizations. And too bad that the institution INL-UCC was keeping track of some reports, but unfortunately it's closed now. And being mindful about the role of partisanship, which can be both positive and negative, awareness of clientelism, patronage, and its role in democratization, and perhaps realizing that clientelism is a part of democracy. I'm going to stop here, and for respecting the time of the audience and other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saleh. That was really interesting and different from, we can see the difference between, those who are involved in the political life directly and those who are observing and studying as you are. Now, before we get the questions, we'll go to our final panelist. And he is joining us online, and he's actually tested positive. So we hope that he has a speedy recovery. Mr. Bedirhan, he is from Turkey, and he is a research intern at the think tank Arab Reform Initiative. He holds a master's degree and a bachelor's degree from Sciences Po Paris. His research focuses on religion, value, politics, and democracy in Tunisia. His presentation title is going to be Beyond Religion, When Populism Meets Post-Islamism in Tunisia. Mr. Bedirhan, thank you very much for making sure to join us. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Islam and Liberty Network for their invitation, of course, and I'm terribly saddened for not being there today physically because I have COVID, and please do excuse me if my voice trembles, though I have very mild symptoms, it can still be bad. So
we can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. So my presentation is, it basically looks at Islamism, post-Islamism, and populism in Tunisia, and it's the result of my master's research partially, and then partially it includes my remarks from an ongoing research I'm trying to do on conservatism in Tunisia. And the main question I was interested in was, how did it happen that the two actors who had the strongest actors in Tunisian politics, President Said and the Ennahda party, who seemed to share similar ideological viewpoints, which was religious, conservative viewpoints, ended up being on such bad food, which resulted in the crisis we're experiencing right now. So to look at that, I want to first start with the concept of post-Islamism. So post-Islamism well, of course, Islamism is a term that's very familiar with most of the people, I guess, here. As you know, an Islamic way of organizing society. It's seeing an ideology in Islam. It's related to Muslim Brotherhood. Historically, it's a political family, I guess, right now, which includes very different versions of it around the world, you know. But then post-Islamism is a concept that a sociologist, Asif Bayat, coined in 1995 to describe a shift in the Islamist movement. He based his observations on Iran, but I think now it's used very widely to talk about different movements. And Nahda in Tunisia is one of these. So Asif Bayat sees post-Islamism first as an ideology, which basically changes the rationale and reconceptualizes Islamism by remarrying Islam with individual choice, freedom, with democracy, with modernity. So this means a qualitative shift in Islamism as an ideology. But at the same time, it means a condition. It refers to a condition in which after a phase of experimentation, the appeal, energy, and the source of legitimacy of Islamism get exhausted, even among the supporters of Islamism itself. So a question that has been asked by many scholars is, to what extent does it apply to Tunisia? So my personal observation through my research was that in Tunisia, it began, I think, much earlier than what people thought, because we have seen offshoots in 1970s and 80s with people like Hamada and Naifer. But I think more interestingly is the period after the revolution, because after the revolution, and Nahda has made many steps, you know, they accepted the democratic constitution, they accepted the coalition governments, the constitution, the democratic politics, and the 2014 constitution was a result of that. And the 10th Congress of Nahda, which, I mean, Ghanouchi declared as Nahda's exit from political Islam. But I think what it really meant in practice, from my observation, was that it meant the prioritization of politics at the expense of religious activism. You know, so the religious sphere in Tunisia was very weak, and it remained quite weak. And this is actually quite in contrast to other democratic Islamist parties we have seen it, like in Turkey, for instance. So why did this happen? Because I mean, there's a compromise that happened between Nahda and Nida, which I think played the most important role in that, because then when this compromise happened, we saw an ideological moderation of Nahda. And religion, in a way, began to fade away as the pressing issue in the country. So in the 2011-2014 period, religion was a very pressing issue for most of the citizens and most of the actors themselves, political actors, for Nahda, for Nida, and it began to fade away. And Nahda stopped pushing for what some people would call maybe radical Islamizing politics. They didn't push for Islamizing, for instance, the institutions, religious institutions of the state, like the religious Minister of Religious Affairs. You know, so with that, actually, whereas there was a very among many less religious, less citizens that Nahda would be super Islamizing the country, this fear started fading away after 1914, actually. And the priorities of the citizens, including the people of Nahda, started changing. So the ideological debates that we mentioned started losing their importance. And if you look at the accusations against Nahda right now, they're very different from the accusations we have seen in 2013, because in 2013, you know, it was about the Islamizing politics, whereas right now it's corruption. It's the closed nature of its organization. It's an ability to reform the different institutions, justice, security system, its alliance with the old regime figures like Nida. It's an ability to discover growth in economic sense, and an ability to deliver social justice. I mean, so the importance of ideology, of religion as an ideology as well, faded away for many Tunisians. And even if you look at the Islamist militants themselves, when I talk to younger people from Nahda, you know, when I talk to older people from the old ages, they would always refer to Al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb, the famous names, and sometimes even Gramsci and Marx. And the people right now, they don't read Al-Banna. They don't need Marx. They don't read Marx. They watch YouTube videos, you know. So it was a very different shift, generational shift within the supporters of itself. But then what happened that the political polarization at the parliament remained between mainly secular-minded parties and Islamist-minded parties, ideological lines, but the criticism changed. And this is at such a point that populism arrived in Tunisia. But when I say this, I don't mean that the religious practice or the importance of religion or culture or identity went away in Tunisia. It remained, but it changed its face, I think. And this is why Kais Said won in such a victory as well, because I mean he was supported by Al-Nahda. They were from the same ideology. They were supposed to be defending similar ideas, you know. But then Said was very different, because Said did not come from a party basis, and Said has this became a defender of or a symbol of populism. And what I understand by populism is not just words, it's not just appealing to people, it's something that has been very much discussed by political science literature, though the term is contested. So I mean, some people see populism as an ideology as well, which poses the rich versus the elite, the rich elite versus the people versus the corrupt elite, and it wants to reactivate the general will of the people. Yes, there is that. It's also a way of doing politics, a very personalized way of doing politics through uninstitutionalized means. Yes, there is that. But what I'm really interested in here is a relational, sociocultural approach to populism. So it's defined as a low way of doing politics, which means that the leader tries to fusions with the people. So this means speaking the language of the people, speaking, displaying taste similar to the people, and also means using a very personal authority and not a procedural authority. So creating a fusion between the leader and the masses. But there is a catch point here. It's that the leader is the hero fighting for the masses. So the leader is like us, but he's also above us. I think this is very visible in Said when he speaks in Fusha, you know, the literary Arabic and not the Tunisian dialect. But then how does he how does he create the fusion with the people? Through what I call his cultural conservatism. So he does not adhere to the Islamist ideology, but he seems to have discovered something much more stronger than the old ideology of Islamism, which is now losing its importance. And even it's in post-Islamist form, is losing its capacity to appeal to the people. It's the cultural conservatism void of ideology, I think, that is very appealing to the people, you know, because he is defending very similar points. So, and in that way, I think he has been more successful in appealing to the younger generations who actually, according to most surveys, are much less religious, but still defend similar culturally conservative positions. And in that sense, he has managed to appeal to the masses by seeming as one of them, but not defending a fixed ideology without any organization, just going direct at the people. And this, I think, brings me to the question I want to ask, and by asking actually, or a criticism towards us researchers in a way as well, because I think there's been a lot of work published on recently, or the policymakers in Europe, in North America, in Tunisia, researchers, political science, we focus too much on the ideology, we focus too much on Islamism as well, especially, and post-Islamism, all these things. But the thing is, an ideological moderation, but I think we missed the point of how people live and connecting to people through their lifestyles, through culture, without the ideological debates, and how much of a strong force that can have, and how this can empower a politician, which can then go on to dismantle institutions, dismantle democratic institutions especially. So I would like to end with this. I hope I didn't take too long of your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bedirhan. That was really very insightful and different from what we used to listen about this topic. There's already a question for you. Mr. Ghassan, you ready? Try the other one.
Hello, everybody. So, hello, everyone. So I'm glad to join this conference. So despite the fact that I was not here since the beginning, I think I missed interesting presentations before the break, but I also witnessed the interesting presentations after the break, presentations coming from academic researchers. So to be honest, I'm more interested in academics than politicians. So, I would like to ask Mr. Salah about his presentation. So, your presentation focused on local issues. So, I want to ask if the data you have extracted from your work is able to show that there is a populist like dérive, dérive en français, dérive, that we are going to a populist stage, yes. So
populist tendencies in.
Okay. So if this data was was warning us about a populist stage, and we witnessed the results. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't. It's a great question, but unfortunately, I don't have that data. Maybe you can check Arab Barometer, Google Arab Barometer, and they have online analysis section where you can analyze their data online, and they have specific questions that could tap into populist tendencies, perhaps. You can check them by yourself, but with the data that I collected my own, I cannot speak of such trends. But what I've observed, I can speak of my conversation with council members, is that I think in the constitution building process and the subsequent events, Tunisians focused too much on preventing one single party from capturing all power, especially Ennahda. So they set up all these boundaries that should necessitate consensus, right? And different parties working together. They set up these rules, electoral rules or working rules that necessitates consensus. What happens is that this structure frustrated people at the local level. I can speak at the local level. This structure frustrated people and increased the demand for a single leader at the municipality, a powerful mayor, right, without the constraints in that case, that can really push forward. And I think this dynamic can also be, applied to broader Tunisian national political space, right? What happened? Why people got so frustrated with the parliament? One reason is that I think the inability to see who is governing, who is not governing, because the structure is set up in a way that, different parties with very little connections have to work together, right? So, and there is no single party that can have a government. You can say, okay, this guy is governing, this guy is in opposition, so I know who to punish, right? So this sense was lost. I think this the electoral structure that emphasized too much consensus at the expense of some other potential circumstances that may arise is a factor that supported the phenomenon of Qais Said, but it's not the only factor. So this is my brief perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this answer. Before we go to the concluding remarks of Mr. Ali Salman, I would like to ask, on behalf of so many people, I would like to ask Mr. Badirhan a very quick question, and I would like a brief answer if he may. Oh, okay. So just a lot of people in Tunisia, as you know, accuse the Nahda party of being populist because they're using religion according to them and to lure people to, you know, get to vote for them and stuff, regardless of whether this is right or wrong. These same people fail to see the populism that Qais Said is you know, exerting in his, you know, speeches and his political campaign. So how do we explain this? Because this is very strange to me and many people as well.
Yeah. So I think no, I don't. In my book, Ennahda does not qualify as a populist party or a movement, and nor does many other parties in Tunisia. Qais Said does. Nabil Karoui probably does. And this is not just me. I mean, just naming people as such. It has to do with the different things we take. I mean, I don't have the time here to develop on the theories in academia that have been built around populism. But using religion per se does not mean populism. Populism is something different. It's not just. It's also not just demagogy. You know, populism means using a personalistic approach. It's us versus them, it's elite versus people, because Ennahda, yes, Ennahda had a party scheme that has been working on. I mean, we don't see a leader that's connecting with the population, no. I mean, look at Ghannouchi's popularity rates. He is one of the least popular men in Tunisia, like in all country combined. He has, and Ennahda is much more popular than Ghannouchi himself right now as a party. So it's and Ghannouchi is loved by the militants, but Ghannouchi is not loved by the Tunisian public. I mean, all the data show that. But Ennahda still has a popularity among Tunisians, even after the 25th of July. So this, I think, is a basic example of how Ennahda is not really a populist movement. But what Ennahda did was they tried to rely on Said's populism in 2019 elections. They formed a coalition with Qais Said. I mean, not a coalition in the government, parliamentary coalition, but a power ruling coalition. I don't know why. This is to be asked. Maybe they thought they could control him. Maybe they thought they were ideologically similar, so it would work better than working with other people. But at the end, they formed a coalition, and they formed a very believing coalition. If you look at, I mean, I don't want to name names, but I followed very closely what people used to say about people from Ennahda, used to say about Said in 2019. They were mocking people voting for Nabil Karoui on Facebook openly. Very big leaders in Ennahda were mocking people for voting Nabil Karoui against Said. And when you listen to them now, it's like, oh, he's going to be the Gaddafi, he's the devil, you know? It's the guy you brought to government. I mean, why did this turn happen? Actually, it's not very surprising, because if you look at experiences of other countries, parties, in this case, one of them is the president, not a party, but political actors from similar backgrounds tend to do worse in power together than parties from different ends of the ideological spectrum sometimes. Why? Because they're fighting for the same electorate. I just one little example to finish with. I went to the Ennahda's March for Stability and Defense of the Institutions. I think it was 25th of February last year. And I met very interesting people there, like young people. And you know, what I heard there, as a young guy who was a very pious guy, and it was like, you know, we're in a crisis, he said, but I trust the president. I think the president will solve the issue. And it was a point where the crisis between Ennahda and the president was at its climax, and this guy was at Ennahda's protest, you know, when he still had trust in the president, you know. So it shows that how the electorate they're trying to appeal to are still, in a way, we're still confused at this late stage, you know. So yeah, I'd like to end with that. Thank you.
This is what Mr. Badirhan calls a brief answer. But it was really interesting. Thank you very much. And I totally agree. I don't know about the others. And then we have another viewer from Turkey. We have a lot of Turkish people here. That's really an honor. Mr. Chari raised his hand. If you want to go ahead and ask a question, the floor is yours.
Everyone.
Hello.
I am, and I would like to ask a question. about the Kayside term. How do you term or Kayside as a is this term or his decisions can we interpret as a kind of counter-revolution to 70?
We cannot hear very well. Okay. If you can type your question so that we're sure. Can you please type your question so that we can get it and make sure that's what you said?
The process. All right. Sorry about. Okay. All right.
Oh, we can hear you now. You can go ahead and say and ask a question, but it would be safer if you type it so that we're sure that that's what you said. Maybe if you turn off your video, your connection would be better.
Yeah, I can talk if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now. All right. I think it's
Kayside relations with the old.
okay. I think it's better if you type your question. That would be much better.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Sorry. I would like to ask about Kayside's term relations with the old regime, the ancient regime Ben Ali term. How is it is, and how do you find his relation, his stance with the old regime Ben Ali term, and how do you interpret his decisions or the coup? How do you interpret them as a counter-revolution? Can we count this as a counter-revolution to democratic process, or is it is just trying to find a balance or trying to regulate or reform the democratic process? To the all panelists, thank you for all, and sorry about the internet.
That's totally fine. Thank you very much. So just to repeat your questions for those who want to answer it. Two questions. Qais Said's relationship with the ousted president regime, Ben Ali, and is his decision, can we view it as counter-revolutionary, his coup, or was he trying to really reform, do some reforms? Jawhara, you want to go ahead? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so concerning the relationship of Qais Said with the old regime, or later we discovered as Tunisian people, as Tunisians, we discovered that he used to give lectures in the academy of the RCD, the ancient, the old, or the ancient. Or the former ruling party, the party of Ben Ali, but I don't think that he was an effective leader within this party, and I think that this later discovery is a part of the propaganda against Qais Said. And even though I am a fervent opposing activist against Qais Said's coup, but I don't think that he is a counter-revolutionary. I think Qais Said is a kind of an outsider, an outcast, a populist leader. He sees the opportunity, or he sees the opportunity of this failure that I talked about, the failure of the political class to immunize the democratic transition from any regression, from any slide back. So he is trying, in order to be fair with this man, he's trying to reform thinks and reform Tunisia in his own way. The problem, this is the problem with Qais Said. So but that does not mean that that there is no way for the ones who have a kind of, or who are bearing a grudge against the Tunisian revolution to once again to seize the opportunity of what Qais Said is doing in order to put an end to this revolutionary process and to this democratic process. So Qais Said himself, I think it is unfair to describe Qais Said himself as a counter-revolutionary actor, but that does not mean that those who are not satisfied with what has been happening in Tunisia during these years since 2011 cannot seize the opportunity to end this revolution that deprived them from privileges and from power. I hope that my answer is clear enough.
Thank you very much, Jawhar. That was really, I think it was really to the point. All right, we're actually coming to the end of our session, and I hope you enjoyed both sessions, the first one and the second one. Now we come to the concluding remarks of Mr. Ali Salman, who is the CEO of the Islam and Liberty Network and who came all the way from Pakistan. Mr. Ali, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tasneem, and I wish to thank first of all the speakers here and all the participants who are physically present, and as well as those who attended online and kept us all very engaged with their discussion and comments and question and answers. It's great to see many participants coming from different countries. I was looking at some countries I could, of course, except from Tunisia, we had participants from Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan, US, Finland, and a couple of other countries. So it's I think it's an interesting times, and people are interested in learning more about what is happening in Tunisia and what implications or consequences does it have for the countries in the region and elsewhere. I'd also like to acknowledge the support provided by the Atlas Network for supporting this project, which I think maybe Tasneem, you can talk in the end about the other activities of this project, including the videos. So we can all be more aware of what do we plan to do in this space. So in my remarks, I'm just going to sort of revisit some of the thoughts which we heard earlier. I think from the very start of this conference, we talked about identity politics, and it was argued that the identity politics has remained a dominating sort of debate or discourse in last 10, 11 years, especially post-revolution. And it was also remarked that, in that context, what we saw that discussion on the socio-economic challenges was sort of put on a, behind the burner. So not enough focus was given on the social and economic issues of Tunisian people, but rather the discussion was mostly on the identity politics. And I think it was also remarked that a new constitution was formed, but then perhaps this new constitution was not sufficient to provide for a dispute resolution mechanism, which is expected from a constitution and from a democratic setup, that led to sort of paralysis when it comes to addressing the long-term challenges of country as a whole. And then we also heard about the role which according to one of the participants has been played by the external intervention. So these are the, I think, very broad concerns which we heard today. It is clear that this is an ongoing process. It is true, and I agree that perhaps 10 years or 11 years is not a long time period in nation's history. But even if, frankly, if I look at US, which is the longest living democracy in our age, 250 years or so, even that has its limits, and we cannot say that they have perfected their democracies in 200 years. Look what happened last year in Washington D.C. Upon the when President Trump could not renew his term. So there was a mob attack on the Capitol Hill. And recently, U.S. nation they were also reflecting on what has gone wrong with their democracy. So we cannot, my understanding is that we cannot fix a time limit. While we can hope that maybe in 20 years or 30 years situation gets better, but may not be as perfect or as in even 200 years. So I think the time is perhaps only one dimension, but this time period has provided us a reflection on what has been missed. And as an external observer of these developments, and based on my discussions with friends here in the last few days, I come to this conclusion that the discussion about the jobs, the discussion about the state role in the economy, the discussion around the fiscal balance, also, let's say, what is the new development model of Tunisia should be, has simply been missing in the overall political discourse. And I tend to take this view that yes, perhaps 10 years are not enough, but then this is also not a small time period. So this period did provide an opportunity and window to political parties to create these new avenues of socio-economic transformation and socio-economic development of the society. And it seems that sort of this window was missed, but that of course doesn't mean that it is the end of the world. When we talk about bringing citizens back to power, there are so many other channels also available. But I don't think, I think that's my sort of one important takeaway, is that going forward we have to talk about economy, bringing food on the table, talking about productive jobs. When I was recently, just a day ago, I was traveling between Tunis and Specs, and I saw so many people on the road, of course, who didn't have proper jobs. So it means that there are the economy itself has not been able to provide the productive jobs, and maybe the education system needs to be looked at. So there are other issues, not just the political, the distribution of power or balance of power, but the other issues in the society like education and economics, which perhaps needs to be looked at, and that can also provide mechanisms back to citizens for empowerment. Right? So politics is one way, but then providing livelihoods, economic empowerment, largely broadening the middle class. So if you look at the history of Tunisia, of course, I mean, all of you know much better than me, the fact that the role of the state has been central in the patronizing and distribution of wealth and resources, it has created an elite around the state. And it is not a story, by the way, unique to Tunisia. This has happened in so many other countries. The only way out, of course, is to reformation and sort of definition of the role of the state in the economy itself. So that's, I think, one broader takeaway message. And the second broad takeaway message for me is, as our last speaker was talking about, post-Islamism, and I tend to agree that this is an important theme that we saw in especially the later half of the last century, when the ideology of Islamism survived and thrived in different Muslim societies across the globe, and in many parts they became part of the democratization process. But even then, perhaps they need to, now some of them are moving to the next stage and talking about the problems of society. I think the example of Nahda itself is an important example of transition, or what the Sheikh Anushi used to refer to as Islamic democracy is now referred to as Muslim democrat. So there is perhaps realization of these changes, but a lot needs to be done along these grounds, that simply an ideology and adherence to an ideology is not sufficient, and maybe that model has lived its age already. People want to see the changes in this debate. And lastly, we all acknowledge the role of the social media in the revolution itself, but it is also the social media and the spread of the social media which has posed more challenges for traditional political parties, which relied on traditional mechanisms of bringing people together. Those mechanisms have also now, I think, are sort of things becoming of past. So yes, those tools were there available, which helped in revolution, but then also those tools also mean that new ways of politics is also needed. So I think these are my thoughts I wanted to share. But I must say I thoroughly enjoyed all the discussions, political comments, as well as the academic analysis. So I wish to thank the speakers here. Over to you, Tasneem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali, for these insightful remarks. And I would like to thank everyone who joined us online and who joined us in this room. And before concluding, I wanted to highlight something regarding this project, Bringing Citizens Back to Power. I wanted to thank the Atlas Network for supporting us on this project. And I wanted to highlight the fact that this is the last phase of our project, organizing the conference. There were two other phases. The first one was to hold meetings with civil society activists and Tunisian youth to talk about their thoughts concerning what's happening in Tunisia after, the 25th of July, the presidential decrees. And also we have produced 8 videos. You will find them soon in our Islam Liberty Network YouTube channel, and also Facebook page and also Twitter page. So please do follow us on them. And these videos are short videos about the Tunisian constitution and also about life, political life and social life in Tunisia. And the purpose of the entire project is to grant non-Tunisians, especially, the opportunity to understand what's happening in Tunisia. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for making this conference a success, and for the great discussion, and looking forward to meeting you all. Of course, we will upload this conference, all of it, on our social media pages, and we hope that you are going to join our network for future events. Thank you so much, and goodbye.